Has been asked, excuse me, not one question has been asked about the accomplishments of the public broadcaster over the last 6 years.
Just because it's all made up anyway.
Look inside yourself, Rosemary.
You referred to KPIs, key performance indicators. Would the idea that a growing movement in our country would like to defund your organization be weighed into an analysis of key performance indicators and determining whether the discretionary portions of the bonuses that you've acknowledged there is a percentage that is discretionary and not contractually obligated? If people don't like what we're doing, if people don't trust us, if people would like the government to take money away from our bloated organization, maybe we shouldn't be spending more of their money than we have to.
Today we have Travis Dhanraj, former journalist.
Tomorrow on a Can't Be Censored live special, a story that has been building for months reaches a new moment. Travis appears before Parliament and testifies about what happened inside the CBC. What is said there could change the conversation about Canada's public broadcaster and shake up the Canadian media landscape.
Oh, yeah.
We'll start with Mr. Dhanraj. You have the floor now for 5 minutes, sir.
Have to press this? There we go. Appreciate it. Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. As a kid growing up in Alberta, I wasn't like most of my friends. Every night, I watched The National with Knowlton Nash. He represented a public broadcaster that belonged to Canadians. Not to power, not to party, but to the public. And that is the CBC that I believed in. Now, many Canadians know the story about one of my tweets. In April 2024, I publicly stated that Canada Tonight had requested an interview with then CBC President Tait, and the request was declined. Facts. Shortly after, I was removed from the air. Now, on May 7th, 2024, Tait told this very committee she was, quote, not aware of any repercussions. Yet 24 hours earlier, ATIP records show her vice president, Barb Williams, briefed her directly about my situation. Now, that matters because trust matters. The tweet was not the beginning. It was the breaking point. For months prior, tensions had been building, not over performance, but over control. While I was publicly held up as a bold, diverse host, my ability to lead the very program carrying my face and name was quietly being stripped away. CBC's stated commitment to diversity contrasted with realities of tokenism. Still, I pushed forward, creating a nightly panel to showcase real diversity, including of thought. I questioned unequal pay. Why, for example, one contributor who was Indigenous always needed to be paid, while others weren't. When a prominent black journalist requested compensation after appearing doing the exact same job, I was told to reconsider booking him moving forward. I attempted to end this discriminatory practice. Instead, the panel was cancelled. When it came to politics, interviews were blocked under guardrails, governed by an internal document never made public, titled Parameters for Political Guests. Political access was centralized, booking decisions controlled elsewhere. It did not happen once. It became a pattern. It became the standard. Power in Politics, hosted by David Cochrane, was given gatekeeping authority over which politicians could appear on Canada Tonight. When I questioned that control and who was in control, I was viewed as disruptive. Now, at the same time, I raised concerns about a toxic environment. After I sat down with Speaker Greg Fergus for a conversation on Black History Month, Chief Political Correspondent Rosemary Barton circulated internal communications questioning my program, copying senior leadership, insinuating she or Mr. Cochrane should have done the interview. It was an intimidation tactic, which management ignored. I and others raised concerns about bullying behavior by senior figures, including Mr. Cochrane. But while he remained on air, I faced discipline and marginalization. Now, the transcripts of these meetings show the issue was not about my journalism, but about reputational risk to the corporation. I received a written warning carrying the threat of termination. I was placed under confidentiality restrictions that prevented me from correcting public and internal narratives. CBC silenced and intimidated me simply for trying to do my job and fulfill my public service role to Canadians. Now, this is not about left or right. It's not about one tweet or one career. It's about systemic control, tokenism, selective enforcement, and a toxic culture where intimidation went unchecked. When I refused to waive my rights under the Canadian Human Rights Act in a proposed confidentiality agreement right here, and a gag order, essentially, my role was not renewed. My union, tasked with protecting my rights as an employee, told me explicitly, quote, "It's very much a normal thing that we use." After 25 years in journalism, my career ended. That dream I had as a kid of working at CBC shattered along with my trust in it. Now, inside the newsroom, the message was unmistakable and did not need to be spoken. I raised concerns. I challenged centralized control and bias. I fought for real diversity and equal standards. I tried to do my job as a journalist. Within months, I was pulled off the air, disciplined, restricted from speaking, stripped of my primetime program, and eventually out altogether. Now, if you were still working there, would you feel safe raising similar concerns? This is how silence becomes culture. It's how whistleblowers are intimidated. Public institutions do not weaken from scrutiny. They weaken when they avoid it. The CBC that I believed in was strong enough to withstand accountability. If it is to endure as a public broadcaster worthy of Canadians' trust and over $1.4 billion of their money, it must be strong enough to withstand it again. Accountability is not destruction, it is survival. Thank you for your time.
These videos keep getting weirder and stranger.
So first, did you say that you were on a personal trip to France, decided to extend your vacation, go to the Olympics, and then bill the taxpayer for it? Is that correct?
I was on a personal trip to France, and I did not bill the taxpayer for my flight or travel from Canada.
What did you bill the taxpayer for?
The hotel and the train to get to Paris.
Where does your personal trip end and your
The day I
taxpayer billing begin?
when I, as part of my job, being at the opening of the Olympics was absolutely expected of me, so I interrupted my holiday and took the 4 days to go to the Olympics.
Could you understand why that sounds concerning to somebody? Just because, bit of a weird situation where you get to go on a trip, you're having your personal time, and then you just unilaterally get to decide what becomes work and what doesn't?
Well, not if I'm not charging the company for the trip.
But you did charge the taxpayer $6,000 for
Correct.
your
When I
time in
was
Paris.
working in Paris, I did, yes.
But could you understand why it would be concerning?
I would think that it would be concerning
that
I would be
decision
it would be
completely on your own?
concerning if the CEO of CBC Radio-Canada did not attend the opening of the Olympics, given it was one of the most important events of our calendar year.
But when the average Canadian hears that you're charging thousands of dollars to the taxpayer and you are just kind of deciding when your personal time ends and your billable time begins, it gets to sort of a broader concern, and to the point about bonuses that many of our colleagues have made today, of whether you have respect for the taxpayer. Can you see why that would be concerning to the average Canadian?
I do not make those decisions alone. I always check in with my chair, and I behave in a responsible fashion.
Mm-hmm. So I'd like to ask if you agree with a statement that's been attributed to you. And I'm going to quote, "The defund narrative has picked up momentum, especially as it relates to CBC television." Did that come from you?
Yes.
Okay. So that was reported last week by the National Post from an email they obtained from you, and I believe in January 2024. Is that correct?
I presume so, yes.
Okay. So when you look at the concerns over your expenses, right, which I think legitimate concerns over where your personal vacation time ends and where your billable time begins, when you see the concerns over news stories related to your bonuses that are going out and bonuses you may receive or executives receive, the $18 million that we've been talking about today, do you think any of that might contribute to what you yourself have observed as a growing movement to defund the CBC?
I absolutely do not.
Why is that?
Because I believe that having experienced now the third appearance at this committee, I would say that there is a clear effort on the part of members of this committee to vilify and to discredit me and to discredit the organization. Not one question has been asked, not one question has been asked about the accomplishments of the public broadcaster over the last 6 years and how we have served
I think our
Canadians.
Liberal colleagues have asked you some of those questions, so I think that's not a fair representation of your time here today. But let's go back to something that our colleague, Mr. Coteau, asked you earlier. You referred to KPIs, key performance indicators. Would the idea that a growing movement in our country would like to defund your organization be weighed into an analysis of key performance indicators and determining whether the discretionary portions of the bonuses that you've acknowledged there is a percentage that is discretionary and not contractually obligated, that those percentages that you might consider, if people don't like what we're doing, if people don't trust us, if people would like the government to take money away from our bloated organization, maybe we shouldn't be spending more of their money than we have to. Could that not cross your mind in analyzing the KPIs?
We do not take into consideration political wins or influences in determining our business metrics.
So you would call it a political reaction for the average Canadian to hear that you're doling out $18 million in bonuses, that you're billing the taxpayer for your time in Paris while on a personal vacation. That's a political concern that the average Canadian wouldn't have a pure interest in that based purely on the fact that they are giving you their hard-earned money through taxes?
I'm not sure I understand what
30
you're
seconds.
getting at on this question. I'm
30
sorry.
seconds, please.
You're trying to marginalize legitimate concerns about abuse of taxpayer dollars and any accountability that we are trying as parliamentarians to introduce here, and you're saying it's purely political. And what I'm saying is the big, beautiful, growing movement to defund the CBC is not a purely political movement, but it is a matter of taxpayer accountability. Can you not acknowledge that?
I will not, Madam Chair, I will not be accused of abusing taxpayer dollars. I'm sorry, for the record. We have managed our budget extremely carefully. We were facing $100 million.
I don't think the Canadian people would agree with you.
Giovanni, will you allow Ms. to finish your answer? Thank you.
We were facing a $125 million deficit. We managed as carefully as we could, and we respected the obligations we had to over 1,180 employees. I believe Canadians will understand. And by the way, 73% of Canadians still consider us the most trusted source of news. 79% of Canadians say they believe that CBC should be in the future of this country.
Is that reported on by the CBC?
I think
those facts, those
gone
data?
over time, Mr. Giovanni.
All right, thanks for watching, gang. Smash the like, hit subscribe. Catch you in the next video. Cheers for now.